Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked. Today I'm doing a discussion over Tzolk'in and its expansion, Rise, Tribes of Prophecies. I don't know what I thought it was called. And here's the deal. This game is 13 years old at this point, so honestly, who cares about a discussion on Tzolk'in? But I had never played this, and every time it gets brought up, people are asking, hey, have you played it? Because it's renowned as one of the best. Technically, I think it's the first in the T series of games that Daniel Tassini and I think David Turchi did. I know Teotihuacan was kind of the first thing that people were like, hey, wait a minute. There's a lot of T games that are about to start coming out. But Tzolk'in is highly, highly accredited, and I can see why. This game is so very good. There's, if you've been watching my channel recently and any Euro games that are coming up, my response to a lot of them are, it's good, but I don't really want to play it. Or just because I'm not in that headspace at the moment of long, complicated, heavy Euros. I just don't feel like playing them. But I still like Euros. I still like games that are of this ilk. And Tzolk'in is the perfect game for me right now within this Euro because it's very easy to learn but has a lot of depth to it. There's tough decisions that you are making throughout the game because you're not able to do everything. And a lot of recent Euros definitely feel like they're geared towards letting you do everything. The two that come to mind that came out last year is Windmill Valley and Unconscious Mind. Both good Euros, but whenever you can do everything at any given time, you never really have to make any decisions. And that is not the case here. You are constantly weighing your options on when you want to place workers, how you want to place them, how many you want to place, and then how long you want to keep them on these wheels before you pull them back, because you can either place a worker or pull it back. And if you have all your workers, you can't just leave them there and keep passing until the opportune moment. If you have no workers, you have to pull someone. So it's this really awesome ebb and flow feeling of quick rewards and then long-term gain. You kind of can place a worker on a wheel, leave them there for a significant amount of time while you gather the stuff needed to make that worker's action that much better. And even though this game doesn't have a million moving parts, it's such an exquisite design that this is just the type of Euro that I am wanting to play. And it was kind of worrisome that when I'm playing Euros, I'm like, cool, this is good, 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10, and then I sell it. I will not miss this from my collection. And every now and then, there are Euros that still come through. I'm like, this is really good, I want to hold on to this one. But a lot of times I'm getting rid of them. And I've had Tzolk'in and its expansion on my shelf of shame or shelf of opportunity, whatever people want to call it, for years. And that's not an exaggeration. It has been literal years that I have had this, and I just, for some reason or another, never broke it out, never got it to the table. I almost actually sold this because someone wanted a copy. I'm like, hey, it's in shrink and I have the expansion, but they didn't want to fork over the money that I thought it was worth. And I'm like, and now I'm glad I didn't, because this game is fantastic. The simple fact of having to place a worker and also having to manage your all you have to do is manage a few resources on top of the food that you need for your workers, but also the food that you need is the currency as well for a lot of other actions. So it's really just an awesome decision every time that you're doing something. Even from the first turn, it's kind of going to dictate your strategy, really. And I think the last time I felt something like this is the Paladins of the West Kingdom or Viscounts of the West Kingdom, because both of those games also give you tough decisions to make as you're playing the game, because you're not going to be able to do everything. And what's great about this game is there's no randomness except for the buildings that come out. But in my experience, you're not building a ton of buildings unless that's your entire goal, because a monument gives you a ton of points for it, or whatever the reason might be. But I found this game to be strict on resources, but not so strict that you're starved the entire time. If you want to go for a lot of resources, you have that capability, but that is what you are doing. That's your goal, is you see the monuments and the buildings you want to build, and that's your strategy the entire game. Some monuments give you a ton of victory points if you have all your workers out, and you can do that. You can get more workers, but that means you're going to need to feed them, which you can get buildings that makes them free. But the game goes by pretty quickly, and before you know it, it's the end of the game, and the strategy that you've laid out before you is like, okay, well, you need to play super efficient if you want to get that. Like, for example, the tiles that are out right now, there are just farms you can buy that make one of your workers not cost any corn. It's like, cool. And if you want to get all 6 of your workers out, because the monuments gives you 18 points at the end of the game for having all 6. If you don't have those farms, then you have to have some form of corn engine, which you don't really get an engine going in this game. It's not like you have a ton of passive abilities that trigger a bunch of things. There's really just this tech tree that does give you extra resources basically when you harvest. But for the most part, it's, hey, an immediate reward. This lets you build a building. This makes your workers cheaper. This gives you victory points for how far you are on the monuments track. And that's pretty much it. But I like the length of this game as well, because for what you do get, this game wouldn't be amazing if it went on any longer. If it was like, hey, you have to do 2 full wheels of a full rotation, that would be way too long. But I love that gear system. So far, I think I've played 2 games that do that now, Windmill Valley and this. And it's awesome. It's so simple. This game came out in 2012. It's insane. And I see now, I've just been missing out for the past 13 years. One thing that I have noticed, and this isn't really a negative, it's more of, because I have 2 things. One is a positive, and the other one is not necessarily a negative. It's just something to be aware of. The positive one is you can do well with just 3 workers. And what's interesting is a lot of worker placement games, they want you to get all your workers. And I've always been interested in the fact of, can I do really well? Can I win by not touching any extra workers? Obviously, it's a worker placement game. More workers means you get to do more. And a lot of worker placements, you just have more workers to do more things. And here, you're kind of penalized a little bit to have more workers, because that means, yeah, you have more workers to spread out, but if these spots are not free, then you have to pay. And if you have all 6 workers and you send all 6 of them out, you have to pay 15 corn to do that, on top of the fact of the spaces that you have to place them. So if you have tons of ways of having corn and then just do one big turn to send them all out, which you wouldn't really do anyway, I can't think of a reason why, because it would make sense it would make more sense in a bigger player game, because that means if you have all your workers out, then they'll rotate, and by the time it comes back to you, they would have advanced pretty far, so then you can do a bunch of stuff. But other than that, you're not really going to be doing that. You'll just have more to generate, so you could send some out, and you kind of stack it. You send someone out, and that's your turn. You let the tracks move. You send someone out, tracks move. So some people are going to be at higher levels while others are at smaller, and it's just a really cool system. But you don't have to get more workers. You can do well with just the 3 you start with. So I like that. The one that is a little disappointing, but I can't harp on it too much because it did come out, so long ago, over a decade ago, is there are these temple tracks. And you can't ignore it. Like, in my experience, you can't ignore it, nor should you. This is why it's not really a negative, but it's a little disappointing, because you're not going to really generate a ton of victory points if you ignore them. And that's for 2 reasons. One, there are 4 food days in the game. and that's when you feed your workers. But also, 2 of those give you resources based off where you're at on these tracks. There's basically the stone, gold, and wood track. And let's say you're high enough on all 3 of them by the food day. That means you would generate 2 stone, 2 wood, and 2 gold. That's good. But 2 of those other food days give you victory points based on where you're at. And it's exponential as it goes up. So the stone one goes from 0, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 if you make it to the top. Then there's the gold one that's 1, 2, 4, 6, 9, 12, and 13. And then the wood one is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10. So if you're high enough up, even by the first food day, like by the first age, then you could generate, 8 to, 11 points, 8 to 13 points, which is a significant chunk. And then on top of that, if you're the highest on the track, you're rewarded for being the highest depending on which age it is. So in the first end of the first age, the stone track gives you 6 points, gold track gives you 2, and then the wood track gives you 4. So if you're the highest on all those, you're getting 12 points. On top of, let's say, the 13 you got 25 points just for being up on this track. And then at the end of the game, well, you don't ever really go down on this track. You can, if you need corn, desperately need corn, you can beg for corn, and the gods are like, fuck you, and you get some corn, but you go down on the temple track. There are other ways that you could potentially go down. Burning the forest lets you go down, but then you can get access to corn. But let's say you just never go down on these tracks. So you're only going to get better. And if you're already the highest up, if no one's competing against you, you're only going to get rewarded for that. So if you keep making it up, you could potentially get 18, 25. If you make it all the way to the top, you're getting 31 points. And then if you're highest, you get another value. The stone, the only one that goes up in value is the gold one. But the stone gives you 2, gold gives you 6, and then green still gives you 4. So basically, all that is to say, if there's only one person who is actually going up on that track because you're trying to do something else, they're gonna win. And that's not necessarily a flaw. It's just like, man, I kind of wish you could ignore that and get a bunch of victory points elsewhere, which you might, but it's really not gonna compensate. And a lot of games do that. A lot of games there's a specific section that everyone needs to kind of be jockeying for. One big negative I had on Champions of Midgard as a 2-player game was the person who went to the troll slaying spot to cast shame on the other person. That's one of those spaces where everyone should be going for, because the victory points should even out. Maybe you'll edge someone a little bit more on victory points, but you're not getting all of them. Just like you shouldn't be getting all the shame tokens, because then you'll just have a huge negative victory point modifier at the end of the game. Because I had a game like that where I was trying to go off of I finally went up on one of the tracks to try and sneak some victory points, because I realized at the end of the game, hey, apparently you can't ignore this, and that just ended up being my downfall. It was a huge victory point difference. This was my 2-player game. So that's it. Again, it's not necessarily negative. That's just if people are jumping into this game and they kind of are like me, then where it's like, oh, I kind of want to do this strategy and ignore that. Unfortunately, this game doesn't really let you, but that's not something you would really want to ignore anyway, because resources, like I mentioned, they're tight, but not unattainable. Because I've played games where it's like, how the fuck do I get resources? Like this game is really strict. I spent one of my metal, and I have no idea how to get more. That's not the case here. You can clearly see how you get more. You're just not going to be swimming in resources. At least I'm not. I could just be ass at this game. So that's just my only complaint about it. So that's the base game. Now let's talk about the Rise. Why do I keep thinking it's Rise of Tribes? The Tribes of Prophecies expansion. And from playing the expansion and the base game, I can completely see a lot of stuff from Teotihuacan. Well, sorry, where Teotihuacan got its mechanisms. Honestly, not. I mean, they're completely different games, but the temple tracks, that's in there. The resources are pretty much there. Instead of corn, it's cocoa, I think, is cacao, whatever it was. It's actually been a hot second. I'm talking about the regular version of Teotihuacan, not the shitty-ass deluxe edition. Deluxe. But this expansion is like, okay, I see now where, I can't remember which expansion it was, where the Teotihuacan expansion got it, because the Tribes of Prophecies adds calamities, a quick action spot, and some buildings and stuff, but individual player powers. The only one of these that I'm not like, wow, let's add this one every time, is the calamities. I like it, but I think the calamities would be more fun if you've played this game a lot, which, I mean, to be fair, I haven't played this game a lot, but for people who've been playing it since 2012. So what the calamities does is it basically adds another way to score victory points, and so the 3 that we just had for this game was, it'll have 2 things. So for the first 8, like, quarter of the game, you don't deal with one of these. But then you have an effect that is like a negative effect that lasts for the whole era. But then at the end of that era, there is a reward for it. So for example, this one was, for your technologies, you cannot use your level 2. So you don't get an extra stone when you're acquiring stone. You don't get to go up on the temple track when you do a Chicken Itza ability. You don't get an extra food if you're in the water, and you don't get 2 points when you build a building. But you will get victory points at the end of that age if you're on the level 2 or 3, and depending on how many. If you have 0 at level 2, you get -5. If you have 1, it's 0. 2 is 6. 3 is 13. So I like this as an expansion, but I don't like it for every game of this I'm playing, because it just adds a wrinkle to stuff. I do think it's a great variety, and it's a great module to throw in if you've played a lot. But some of them can be, I was just talking about how you can't ignore the temple track. Some of these calamities really mean you can't ignore it, because in the game we just played, 2 of them, which funny enough, this was my game of testing to see if you could ignore the temple track. It might not have helped that 2 of the calamities rewarded you for on the temple track. So one of them was, for every time you went up on the track, you had to pay a corn, but then you got victory points based off how many total steps you've been up on, which for the 9 gave you 6 points, 10 or more gave you 13. And then the other one was how high you were on the green track, but every time you went up on the green track, you had to pay a block resource, which I think they all score you 0, 6, or 13 points. But yeah, probably not my best move to see those and be like, I think I'm going to ignore the temple track. But at the same time, to go up on those tracks, you have to get rid of resources. So again, I like it, and there's enough tiles in there to really just have a huge variety game. If you've played this game a lot, you could honestly just throw that module in, and that would be enough to freshen it every single time. But there is that. The second thing that I will always have is the quick action spot. That is a huge accelerator to let you kind of do more things, but still not really letting you do everything. Because the quick action slot, there are 2 tokens that get thrown in. And around the Tzolk'in wheel, the middle wheel that rotates everything, there are these tokens, and they get placed on a specific action spot for 2 rounds, pretty much. And it works similar to the first player marker in that if you go to it, you pay a corn, and then you get to do that action immediately. And I think that that's just really nice. Some of them are just as simple as getting a resource. Others are letting you build a building. Some are letting you get corn, even though it costs a corn to go get corn. But the fact that you don't have to sit there and send a worker and wait for it to build up, you can just do something real quick. Be like, oh, I really want to build a building. Oh, but that's what lets. But I'm down 1 stone. But that's what lets me get a stone. And whenever the wheels turn next, my character will be one of my workers will be on the spot. I can build a building, and it just allows you to combo a little bit better without it still being broken, because there's limited spots to go to. It always costs a corn, and the action, if you don't do it, just costs it lasts 2 rounds, so they come in and out pretty quick, and it doesn't even last throughout the whole game. So the quick action spot is a huge addition. I really, really enjoy that. And the last one are the individual player powers. This is the one that really, because I played Teotihuacan first, I was like, that's where those player powers come in. Except in Teotihuacan, you get like a really good ability and a negative to that. Here, you don't really. Some of them do, but not all of them. I'm not entirely sure the powers are balanced. At least they don't feel balanced. But people who have played this game a million times can definitely tell me a lot more. But let me grab more of them, because they're the ones that really are. I love individual player powers, so I'm not super upset by that. But one of them, X-Tab, is when choosing starting wealth tiles, you keep 3, and that's just huge. And you only move down 1 step on the temple of your choice. Getting 3 starting wealth tiles, I think is oh no, I have to go down on 1 temple track. Who cares? Whenever you can start with 15 corn and 10 wood and be up 9 spots on the technology tracks. Like, who really cares that you're down 1? The one that I had was my cost of going up on the technologies was cheaper, and whenever I went up on the 4th spot, I got to choose any of the 4 rewards instead of the one you were moving up on. And that inherently sounds good, but I don't know. That one just felt like, because the technologies, I don't think they're amazing. They're good and they're serviceable, but they're not something that you would build your entire strategy on. I don't think, anyway. But others like Yaluk, you begin the game with 5 workers instead of 3, but each of your workers cost 1 extra food, so instead of 2 for each of them, it's now 3, and each unfed worker loses you 5 victory points instead of 3. So that's rough. Yumcox. When placing workers, you pay according to this table, so it's a little bit cheaper. Sending 2 workers is actually free. When you pick up a worker and choose a lower number action, you gain a corn. You do not pay 1 corn for each step back. You may choose to just completely skip your turn. And if you do, you gain 2 corn. But there's enough in here. However, I think some just feel better than others. So I'm not entirely sure if they... this game came out, again, so long ago that maybe they weren't quite up to snuff on balancing player powers at that time. I don't know. Again, people who have played this game a million times can definitely tell me whether or not some of these are better suited for a different play style, or if they're just not balanced. If it's like, hey, take that one out because that one sucks. I don't know. But still, individual player powers is amazing. My favorite module, funny enough, is not the individual player powers, it's the quick action spot. Because, like I said, the resources and stuff is super tight, but the quick action spot kind of it makes it less tight. It doesn't make it free to do whatever you want in the game, but it does let you kind of get a little bit more going. But yeah, this game is fantastic. I'm just flabbergasted that it's taken me so long to finally play it. But I think that's it. I think that's it on my thoughts for Tzolk'in. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm giving the base game... I think I'm going to give the base game an 8. But with the expansion, even though the player powers I think are good and they're fun, and because it's individual player powers, and the calamities I thought are good, the quick action spot, all the modules that you throw in are good. With the expansion, I'm gonna give Tzolk'in a 9. It's so solid. I'm definitely keeping this in my collection, and I'm very happy to play a Euro that's not like, yeah, it's good, I'm gonna get rid of it. So, might be over a decade late, but here it is. Here's my thoughts on this game. If you've been sitting on it, or you've been just kind of like eyeing it, I think it's definitely worth playing. So, that's it, everyone. That's my thoughts on Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar. Let me know what you think of the game in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.